All right, so here we are. Um, let's go ahead and look at some of these. Now, for our purposes, I'm going to call a sketch just any sort of rendering that you as an illustrator make just to give an idea of where the picture would be. A drawing is a finished sketch, a final draft quality, but without any color. And then a picture would be a drawing with colors. So here is obviously a picture. A drawing would be this, but without any of the color, and a sketch would not even have any of this detail. It would just have a quick outline so that you can do work quickly as maybe you sketch out a story in a storyboard without having to put all the work in that makes a final draft drawing or picture. Again, because I don't know whether an idea that we have, a book proposal, will actually ever make it. So let's try to preserve our energy in terms of the quality of the drawing. Although people that might need to look at the idea, the proposal, may need to see a storyboard. So that's when sketches would come in handily. Now, what would this actually be in our terminology? Given the glossary of the schematic that you received, this would be called an integrated picture because it has borders on it, even though you have page margins. So you don't have the color bleeding off the edge. That's called the bleed when it just covers everything and bleeds off into the area that gets trimmed. Here, you actually have a trimmed page. Trimmed is just the official cut, right? That has itself margins. So here the picture goes all the way to the margin, which was the open space for the illustrator to begin with. The margin was closed space. And so we would call this an integrated picture because its borders actually have linear formatting, right? I mean, this is your picture and then it hits and nothing else after that border. So this is an integrated picture because it has color and because it has defined borders. Now this is a spread, and it's an integrated spread because again, you have your borders. All right. The thing about this that I want to point out is be careful when you're doing spreads. If you decide to do a spread, think about the gutter, what's going to disappear in the gutter. All right. So, usually picture books are going to design the spread so that nothing integral, like say a facial expression, is going to be lost in the gutter because there are things that are lost. You can see here that the way a child is going to experience this book, this whole line, the side of the tree, all of that is lost. Now, of course, you can sit there and try to, spread it out, but usually kids and adult readers are not going to do that. So that's something to keep in mind as you develop a spread. Now, a spread is going to be one picture that covers, the 2 pages. So you see the continual drawing. Let's see. Here are full page illustrations. All right, because they cover the full page. This is a full page picture again because it's final draft drawing with color, and it takes the full page. This we would call half page. We would call these half page floaters. All right. Now the reason I'm saying that is that these are different pictures, even though they're on the same page. But they depict different scenes, and this one takes up half a page roughly, and the edges are not well defined. There's sort of a space where the picture is clear, and then as the margins of the picture come into play, the picture fades out. All right, so even though there are defined borders here, the picture itself doesn't have those defined borders. So this would be a floater because you were just kind of focusing on the detail in the center of the picture and you're not really worried about the edges. And this would be a half page floater as well. Now both of these are pictures again because of the color and the final draft quality of the drawing. Here's a spread. All right, another spread. Again, half page floaters. All right, this one particularly illustrates the quality of a floater. You see how you have very defined detail here, but then at the edges, things just kind of disappear. You see what I'm saying? So the drawing kind of floats on the page and the edges merge with the background. So sorry about that. That's what we would call a floater. It's a little confusing here because you actually see defined borders right here. But again, the publisher of this book has decided to basically put off limits, a ½ inch here, a whole inch down here. So at this point, the margins are a dead space on the page. This is actually the open space for the illustrator, and the illustrator is not using borders to separate these two different pictures. So these are half-page floaters. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the back here. Let's see what this is. This is just the end. This is the very last page of the storyboard, and or the story. The phrase storyboard is something we'll kind of reserve for schematics, and you can see here though that this is a half-page integrated. Okay, now what I mean by that is that the picture is developed all the way to the margins of the picture itself, and then there's a clear linear demarcation, right? On this side, developed picture; on this side, nothing, margin space. So for some reason, the publishers decided to have the illustrator leave all this dead space down here. I don't know why, but here we would call this basically a half-page integrated picture, and it's probably a little more than half-page, but we'll just be rough in our estimation there, and this would be a half-page integrated. All right, let's go on to another one. Let's see what this has for us. They're doing their end page here with little, you can't really see this in the video, but little designs of what's going to show up in the picture. This is your full page. Here's a spread, okay? And we would call this an integrated spread because it goes all the way off the edge of the margin. You see that? The literal edge of the page, there are no margins here. So what happened is, as this went to press, the actual sheet of paper was quite a bit larger, right? And this inking went off the edge here, and the knife came and trimmed it so that you have ink starting from the very edge. So this is definitely an integrated illustration, a picture. And but this, okay, what are we going to call this? We'll call this a floating half page. I'm sorry. Let's call this an integrated half page because again, you get the borders of the illustration are very clearly defined, and on one side of the borders you have detailed work, and on the other side you just basically have dead space. So this is an integrated half page picture. But take a look at these. All right, these are third page pictures that are floating because they don't have any clear borders. There's no background work on this. The white page itself is serving as the background, and so there's no end to this illustration that clearly is defined against the beginning of this illustration. They're just floating on the page. So here they're linearly stacked, but sometimes you might have this developed here and this one over here and this one maybe a zigzag pattern. But these are third page floaters. All right, that's how we'll refer to them. This is another set of third page floaters. You see the top there? But again, on this side is you have an integrated halfer, because this is what we would call basically a half page. If you would move this up, it kind of would take up a little more than half. So we're just going to go ahead and call that a half page to distinguish it from a full page. You know, this is your full page illustration. This happens to be a spread, excuse me. Now, in this case, this picture book is sewn, so it doesn't have a very deep gutter at all. And so, you know, you can actually spread it out and see the sewing lines. I believe this is sewn actually with cloth thread, which is incredible, which ups the cost of the book. Now, I notice as I'm doing this video that there's a glare there. I'm sorry for the glare. I'll try to keep that out, but I'm just going to move ahead and get this done. But anyway, this spread allows you to not lose a lot of the drawing, and that's, you'll find that happens. Here are third page floaters. Again, we're going to call them floaters because they don't have distinct borders as illustrations. You can see right here, in fact, that the color just kind of fades out, right? into the background of the page. So this is what I would mean if I ask you to draw a floater. All right, that's that book. Let's see what this one has. I just have certain pages marked that really provide a good illustration of something. All right, so here we have a half-pager picture right here that actually provides its own border. So we would call this a half-page integrated. Okay, and what I mean by integrated is not that the picture is somehow integrated into the page. What I mean is that the picture itself is one complete unit that has borders. So everything in the picture is integrated with itself. All right, even this little corner right here is integrated into the whole illustration. Right, but down here you have smaller pictures that are not integrated as a picture. I mean, obviously you have a center, right? But then there is no background to this. The page itself is being used as the background, so we would call this a floater. You can picture this little picture just floating around, right? So two floaters, and I don't really want to introduce, fourth page illustrations, but that's kind of what this would be, a fourth of a page. We would just say that the illustrations are small, right? But they're floaters. A small floater is how I would actually refer to that. Now, if I refer to a third page floater, I'm asking you to actually do an illustration that roughly takes up about a third of the page. All right. So this is an interesting page in that it gives you an integrated illustration with two small floaters. Now, what about this? Well, basically same thing. You have a floater up there. That's I would probably refer to that as a half page floater, the broom and the dust cloud. But then you have an integrated half pager picture, because again you get the borders. All right, and everything on one side of the border, on this side, is part of the integrated into the illustration. And then after that clearly defined border, you have margin space or page background, basically. So this would be an integrated picture. The thing about these books is that you're going to get quite a few exceptions to what I'm saying. So picture books are the closest thing I think a book can actually get to being a poem. And poems are just huge. A good poem is incredible. It's very worth being put up on a museum wall as a work of art. But poems are very cerebral. For young children, it's hard to access the true beauty of a poem. This is the closest that you would get, I think, to a short lyric poem. And this is actually, in my mind, the introduction of a child of how to think in a layered way and how to experience a poem without even knowing you're experiencing a poem. So there's so much creativity that goes into that even the terminology that I'm trying to introduce here gets tested, gets creatively rearranged, and you're going to find exceptions like you won't believe. Here you have an integrated picture, correct? Because you have clear borders here, and everything on this side is integrated into this well-defined picture, and then you have the border that separates the integrated picture with the non-integrated space of the background of the page. But then you have a floater that's overlapping the integrated picture. So that's a pretty neat illustration of that. Now here, every one of these pictures here is integrated. We would call this integrated full page picture. And again, I'm being very careful with how I'm using the words picture, illustration, drawing, and sketch. A picture is always going to be a final draft drawing with color for us, for our terminology. A drawing will be final draft quality, but without any color at all. So if you just remove the color from all of this and you just had this as an outline or a black and white page, that would be considered a drawing because you can simply do everything with a graphite pencil or a black ink pen. A sketch, again, would be just the roughest version of this without any color, without any really detail or final draft quality, just for storyboard purposes so we can get the book sketched out quickly without, spending months and months of hard work doing that. And a sketch is reserved for the idea side of a book, how we want to develop it, how we can start seeing it come into being. So this is a picture, but all three of those, I'll often refer to them as illustrations. All right, so illustration is sort of a general umbrella term. And I might refer to this as an illustration, but you should know that it's actually technically, in our terms, a picture. And you can see the very defined borders, so this is an integrated full page. And in fact, that's how this book works. This book has just, all of it is integrated full page. All right, so what about something like this? This book sort of takes the opposite and gives you a story that is really all floaters. You see how this is a spread, but it's a floating spread because there are no borders to the picture. You might say, well, the page itself is the border. Yeah, I agree. But then you see how things just kind of fade off into it. You see the line here, and especially the line right here. So there's sort of a fuzzy nature to the borders of the picture because the borders actually aren't there, and that's what I mean when I say this is a floater. So this is a floating spread. These are floating full pages. And another floating spread. Floating. All of this is floating again because the picture doesn't have well-defined boundaries. You might say, well, look, there's kind of a boundary right there, but it really isn't. I mean, this is just the author's attempt to give you a good picture of the overcoat, but then it just kind of blurs out on you there. You know, and look at how the book is just sort of... So there's an attempt to not really give you any borders to the picture, and that's what I mean when I say this is a floating illustration. And really, all of the book is like this. This is an incredible book, by the way. Here you have two... I would basically call these two half-pagers, two half-page floaters. Even though, like, if you really wanted to technically, measure them out, I suppose these would be third page. You know, would probably take a third of the surface page, or even a fourth. But if you look at the page as a whole, half of the page is dedicated to this concept and half to this. So that's why I would still call these half-page floaters. All right. Let's go to the last one here. Now this is an incredibly rare picture book. It's top of the top, both in artistry and story. I've talked to some of you about the fantastic picture book idea. This is a 5.5. This is a rare 10, and this is a Fantastic Picture Books Advanced. This is for advanced readers. Now, of course, you have... as far as picture books go, this is for advanced readers because then you graduate into chapter books and books that are much more characterized by length of text versus pictures. But what I wanted to do with this is basically to show you the insert. All right, so whenever you have a picture within a picture, we're just going to go ahead and call that an insert. And an insert can be a floating insert. It can be an integrated insert. At this point, these are integrated inserts because they have well-defined borders. But, you might find elsewhere, like this right here, this would not be an insert because this is just a picture on the page. But this is a floating illustration to present the second chapter of this picture book. I think all of the inserts here are integrated, but if they just didn't have that border and were just kind of set in there, you would know that that's a floating inset. Well, thank you for watching the video, and thank you for learning these terms.